6:30, and we have a pretty full agenda, so we'll go ahead and get started. First, with regards to procedures for the meeting, this is the 14th February City of Piqua Planning Commission meeting.
Gary, can you tilt your mic? Thank you so much.
This is the 14 February City of Piqua Planning Commission meeting. The way the meeting will be conducted is with regards to the new business, I'll ask the city planner to read the resolution. Then the city planner will present the staff report, followed by a recommendation from the city staff with regards to the resolution. Then there will be discussion among the commissioners and questions with the city staff. Then we will turn it over to an applicant, if there's an applicant for the particular resolution. Some of them have applicants, some don't. Then and the discussions with the applicant will be between the commissioners and the applicant. Then I'll open it up for public comment, and anybody who would like to speak for or against a proposed resolution may come forward to the podium, state your name and your address, and then present your facts to the commission. And after that, there will be discussion among the commissioners. We'll have a motion, a second, and we'll vote and either approve or disapprove the resolution. If there are no objections from anyone to the aforementioned meeting procedures, would everyone present please stand and raise your right hand to be sworn in? Let it be known that all persons present to provide testimony at this 14 February 2023 meeting of the Planning Commission hereby swear or affirm said testimony will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth. All those in agreement, please say I do.
I do.
All those opposed, say opposed. Thank you. You may be seated. At this time, could you call the roll call?
Mr. Gary Koenig,
Present.
Ms. Shannon Brandon,
Here.
Mr. Brad Buck,
Here.
Eddie Harvey,
Here.
and Joe Wilson.
Here. We have 5 commissioners present. We have a quorum. At this time, the meeting minutes from the January 10th, 2023 meeting were circulated for comment. Are there any additions, deletions, or comments in regards to the meeting minutes on January 10th, 2023? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve?
You may want to make sure they all sign the sign-in sheet.
Okay. Oh, and everyone else present, please ensure that you sign in on the sign-in sheet. It's right there on the table right there. Thank you very much. Okay, do I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes of January 10th, 2023?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
The meeting minutes of January 10th, 2023 are approved. There is no old business, new business. If you could read the new business.
Resolution PC 4-23, a resolution requesting a recommendation for rezoning from R2 two-family residential to R3 multifamily residential at parcel N44-25045. So I have a staff report here included in the packet. Mr. Bill Timmerman, the owner of 419 and 421 Broadway Street, has requested to rezone the property. He acquired the property and has plans to take the auxiliary church building shown on the second page of the Planning Commission, of the staff report packet, It's the brick building that used to be used as schoolrooms. He would like to convert these to 6 dwelling units, a multifamily use. So the structure itself has, where did I write? There's about 10,000 square feet of available space. So that kind of, in and of itself, if you're going to convert this to residential, starts to formulate how dense that this is going to end up needing to be in order to be feasible. If you're going to break the structure down into, let's say, just 2 units, which is what the current zoning would support, you'd get really, really gigantic units that may not really be feasible for a multifamily structure at all. So the natural thing would be to continue to break that down until you get unit sizes that make sense for the market. So that's where the property owner is now with the process. We've talked over the what the plan might be for the full property. At this time, we're just looking at this auxiliary building, although the rezoning is going to go for the entire parcel. So rezoning from R2 to R3 would affect that whole parcel, which would include the church and that auxiliary building. We spoke mainly about parking in this case, because there isn't a ton of off-street parking, but we do have available about 4 to 5 spaces in the rear of the auxiliary church building that are available. It should be noted that the rest of the parking would probably line the corner lot. I went by today. It's not super tight all the time. I ride my bike past there every morning. Just depending on the time of day, you're either going to get conflict from the adjacent St. Mary's and all of the activity there. There's a lot of residences around there. But there is some off-street parking to support the use that's being proposed. There are several objectives within the comprehensive plan that speak to the desire to be able to adaptively reuse older structures, to keep that building stock intact, and to introduce housing types that are missing from our housing stock here in Piqua. The applicant has proposed or is envisioning a higher end type of unit style. He's here to speak about it if you have any questions for him. But this is something that is generally absent. So even with the townhomes product that we've seen in the past, it's going to be across the street from Lock 9 Park. Those are all for sale units. So within the urban fabric of the older parts of downtown and our older traditional neighborhoods, there are not a lot of very high-end, nice, fresh apartment units. You do have some that were redeveloped just south of this area. If you go further down Broadway and you meet High Street, there is a brick building across the street from the old service station that's been preserved. There's 12 units of higher end apartments that are there now. They are not supported very well with parking at all, but they're making it work just based on people's ability to time when and where they're going to park within the neighborhood. That's generally how it's been working. Having analyzed all this, I did receive one public comment that was worried about the parking situation. And also about the quality of the apartment units. They wanted to make sure that it was kind of, I don't know, their concern was that it wouldn't be a higher end product marketed toward, I don't know. I would read it straight, but it's mostly about an income status kind of a question. The parking situation, the way I look at this as a planner is as a comparison. So it's not really adequate to just take a vacant state and say, what would a use be compared to vacancy? Because we obviously don't want a vacant building. We want something that's in use. So a church is going to generate a ton of parking needs periodically, whereas residential housing is going to tax you a little bit in the evening times, but it's not an overwhelming amount of parking that might be generated from 6 units of housing. All that said, I think this is meeting the objectives of the comprehensive plan, and I recommend approval of the request to rezone.
Some people came in after the meeting started. If you could, there's piece of paper right there. You could sign in, put your name and address, that information on that paper on the, right up here. The other thing I'd point out is the first three resolutions we're reviewing are a recommendation to the city commission. The fourth resolution is an approval of construction documents. So that'll be the actual final approval, final say with regards to the planning commission. This time, are there any questions in regards to resolution number PC 4-23 of the city staff?
Is there any type of plan for the church building itself, preliminary?
Not at this time, and I think that our process with Code Piqua and having a special use for adaptively reusing old churches is going to be instrumental, because everything is sitting on the same lot. Either a lot split or replatting is going to be needed to separate these two things. It probably wasn't necessary because Code Piqua is around the corner. So no, there's no proposal for the church yet. I think that Mr. Timmerman's been kicking around certain ideas, but he's more in the residential frame of mind at the moment. And I guess to be clear, there's a lot of questions that need to be answered. That's for sure. But the first step is getting the rezoning in place to see if the community has the appetite for this type of multifamily in this location and agrees with the redevelopment. And then we've got a lot of questions that come through the building code with Miami County about how to make the structure safe. And then there's still a change of use zoning permit application that would answer certain questions about how we would deal with the parking situation.
And
Any other questions from, go ahead.
what is the zoning classification in existence around the property now?
In that whole area, it's a mix of it's mostly R2, and then if you go a little bit further to the east, there's a lot of R3 multifamily. So the R2 would have been mapped over retroactively where the church was, because churches are allowed in all of these residential districts. I presume that I don't know about the auxiliary building. I think that probably was built a little bit later, but the church itself does seem to predate the zoning code.
Any other questions of the commissioners? Okay, is the applicant present? Yeah, please come forward. State your name and address.
Bill Timmerman, 4457 Horseshoe Bend Road in Troy. So I don't know if you have questions for me or what you're looking for from me. Kirsten has.
I do have a
stated
question.
her pretty clearly.
She mentioned it's supposed to be upper scale. Define that a little bit.
I believe there's pictures in there of houses that we've done previously. And so we tend to go with a little higher end cabinet, a little higher end flooring. We are not, maybe I shouldn't say it, but we're not slumlords, right? So we do spend quite a bit of money when we've renovated houses in the past, and we plan to do the same for this project. Make it nicer, we spend more money, and in return, we also ask for more rent than maybe you might find in other places. Not out of line rent, but a little higher. And so we do ask for applicants who want to be tenants that they make at least 3 times what the rent is. We're looking at rent for this to be about $1,200 per unit, hopefully up from there. And then we do background checks and credit checks on everyone as well. So credit scores of at least 600, and so we spend a lot. We charge a fair amount, and we expect our tenants to treat our properties in kind. So.
Okay.
The parking, we've had a lot of concerns in the past from citizens about parking. The code requires 2 per residence, so that would be 12. How many with, say, demolition reconfiguration of your lot and other things? How many parking spaces? They don't have to be garages.
Right.
They
right.
just have to be, 9 by 12?
Mhm.
How many can you creatively fit on your property?
So it's only going to be 4 or 5, and that's kind
So
of,
you're only looking right directly behind your property?
yes, would be to the east of that building, kind of in the middle of where the house, school, and church all sit. There's just a
Right by the alley there.
kind of gravel area
You
there.
can't
Yep.
demolish anything and create more space?
Potentially, I guess, but the house is a house, and that's going to be fixed up and rented out as a house. I really don't want to tear a church down, and of course, the school building is what we're going to use for apartments.
So your total number of spaces is,
4 or 5, yeah.
so each apartment doesn't get a space?
No, they do not.
And the requirement is 2?
Entrance, the way that I have it laid out anyway, just, I'm not an architect, I'm not an engineer, but the way I have it laid out is that two of the apartments would be accessed from that area that we're talking about, the parking right there by the alley. The other 4 would be accessed from Broadway
Broadway. Okay.
streets there, so. And I know there is, I guess there's I don't know what you call it. When it was a church, when they were, I guess, dropping kids off, there was a setback there. No parking here to the curb. So I don't know what that normally is, but it seems to me that that's set back farther than what it normally would be because it was a school. Now, it was only ever a Sunday school, though, so it was never, from what I've been told, it was never a 5-day-a-week school. It was only a Sunday school for that particular church.
Yeah.
And they are connected.
I think it's great to reuse, adaptive reuse for the structure, but concerned about the parking.
So the other kind of idea that I floated anyway is that there's a house right next door that's, I believe, pretty delinquent on taxes and maybe, I don't know. I'm not exactly sure what's all going on with that property, but there is a property to the south of the school there that has had issues in the past, and that would be a really nice big space to have a parking lot right there. But of course, someone owns that house. I don't know where they're at with the taxes or anything like that. But that would kind of be ideal, is if someone bought that and made that into a parking lot. I know you don't really like to tear houses down, but I think that one's in pretty good disrepair.
I also do think that we have to just remember that regardless of the project, we're just looking at whether it's appropriate to rezone it from single family to multifamily. So, I mean, it's possible this could have been brought before us without a project even in mind. It's more about whether the multifamily is appropriate in that area.
Any other comments? Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? You take a seat.
All right.
Thank you very much. Any discussion among the commissioners? Do I have a motion?
I make a motion to approve Resolution PC 4-23.
Second.
We have a motion, a second, to approve resolution number PC 4-23. This time, could you poll the commissioners?
Gary Koenig,
Nay.
Shannon Brandon,
Aye.
Brad Buck,
Aye.
Eddie Harvey,
Aye.
Joe Wilson.
Aye.
Resolution number PC 4-23 is approved. Now, if we could read resolution number 5-23.
A resolution requesting a recommendation for a code amendment to Chapter 90, Animals, to allow backyard chickens at residences within the city limits. I have included proposed drafted language for changing Chapter 90 that would allow for raising of chickens in backyards, exclusively for egg production, rather than slaughter or any kind of meat production. Background on how this came in front of you tonight, there are many residents in the city who have signed a petition. They've mostly been interfacing with the city commission directly. A few years ago, the mayor, Thomas Fote, was very interested in legalizing backyard chickens, so that started the conversation early. We have proposed some language to get the ball rolling in terms of public discussion and gathering some feedback. Everything so far has been, I think, generic enough. We're talking about backyard chickens, but not the specifics of what implementation would look like. This is the beginnings of that, and as we've even just released this, I've received many comments, both from planning commissioners and from residents, just asking questions or ranging from questions about whether subdivision deed restrictions or development restrictions would interact with this. I've also received plenty of comment, I think, from you all on the board in terms of how this interacts with the health department. And just health safety concerns in general, whether or not the standards need brushed up to provide for more animal welfare considerations in terms of should we be requiring a minimum square footage per chicken, more spacing perhaps from adjacent residences. So the feedback so far I feel like is mixed and not entirely confident on the proposal at this point in time. I would further that I would love to have more time to review and answer these questions. So Tip City, Gary pointed out that Tip City has legalized backyard chickens, so they would be a great test case right in Miami County to see how this is interacting with our neighboring jurisdiction. More exploration could be done in that arena. I'm also putting together a map of all those subdivisions that do have deed restrictions so that residents can look up. Does my address have anything on its on the plat that says that poultry is not allowed? And in those cases, the city generally does not enforce those rules, but their neighbors could. And so that's something that is important to keep in mind. Any questions for me at this point?
I didn't hear a recommendation.
Oh, I do not have a recommendation at this point. My only thought is a little more time would be helpful.
Okay.
And also just listening to what the community is thinking about with this topic.
Any questions from the commissioners?
I have a couple questions. So in item F, it says, chickens must be provided with an elevated, covered enclosure, and the chickens must be kept in the enclosure. The enclosure must be well ventilated, dry, and clean. Outdoor runs are prohibited. So I just want to make sure I understand this. So we're talking about an elevated chicken coop, but your chickens have to stay in that coop all the time? Is that what this is saying?
Yes.
Okay. I'll be the first one to say I'm all for backyard chickens, but I want to see regulations that
They can run.
I don't think it's healthy, one, to keep your chickens cooped up all day long. Chickens require fresh air. They need to be outside pecking on the ground because of the way that their digestive system is set up. They need to be able to have access to grit. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you're going to have to buy grit and put it in their feed. I'm not saying they need to be free-range chickens, but I do think that we need to look at this prohibition on outdoor runs. Generally, 10 square feet is acceptable per chicken for a run. You can have that fenced in, you can have it covered. It can meet those requirements. But I do not think that it is healthy for the chickens to be in a coop all day long. Generally, what you do is you go out in the morning, you feed the chickens, you let them out in the run. They stay out in the run during the day. At night, you bring them back in, you feed them, you lock them up for the night. but I do think that they need to have access to the outdoors.
That's helpful. Thank you.
The petition, my question is, what did it say and how many people signed it?
That is a good question, and that was a resident-led initiative that I don't necessarily have access to. I don't know that they may have, and I'm just not as plugged into the city commission's workings and everything that they've talked about, but I don't know if they've submitted that petition formally in any way. I could be wrong.
Okay, the other question is, so we don't know what that answer is. The comment with regards to Tip City and me, I coordinated with the Miami County Department of Health, okay? And they indicated in their comments, which you didn't read, which I thought would be included for all the commissioners. There was a number of comments from the Director of Environmental Health indicating to me that prior to my discussion with them, the city hadn't coordinated anything with environmental health, and it doesn't have a health department. So their comment was, Tip City allows for chickens no closer than 100 feet from an inhabited dwelling house, okay? Chickens must be kept in yard, and there's a lot of other things in there. Right now, the city ordinance, you're talking about, it's the distance from an inhabited structure is over 3 football fields. The ordinance which you're proposing here is something less than a first down. You know, it's around 30 feet. So, I mean, we're talking Super Bowl stuff. So their recommendation is a good deal more. Maybe something in between there is more than adequate. They also talked about CDC has a web page devoted to backyard chickens. They provided, there was a report they did in 2022 because of the concerns from the Center for Disease Control that documented directly related to backyard chickens, 1,230 illnesses, 225 hospitalizations, and 2 deaths. I would like to suggest that entire report be included in the record of these proceedings. Children under 5 and seniors 65 years old and older experience more severe illness due to salmonella. They also talk about histoplasmosis, okay, which is it's a lung disease caused by spores directly related to bird droppings, and none of that was presented in the staff report. It is typically fatal if not treated. So anyway, there's a lot of information that I included in my comments. Isolation from storm drain of the, I specifically called out, I thought it was appropriate what you had in there with regards to rabbits. Completely missed that on the chicken ordinance. And it was pointed out by the health department that that is a concern to isolate it, okay? They also talk about there's a correlation between backyard chickens and increased rodent population in a 2017 study, according to Utah State University. All the links are in that information from the Miami County Public Health. This information was not provided to the commissioners. I really think this, since these are professionals in this area of environmental health, that it goes to the question of will not threaten the general health. That has to be a finding of the commission. And I am concerned that we ignore Miami County Public Health's recommendations and their stipulations. So when you put together the ordinance, was this staffed with a environmental health organization?
No, and
The answer is no. Thank
so,
you.
Mr. Koenig, you contacted, and I have no dog in the fight as far as the passage of this. This is something that the community asked for, and so we've put together a first draft. All I'm asking for tonight is an introduction to the topic and some more time to review it. I have not really gotten a beat on the pulse of what the community is looking for. I feel like there's strong opinions on either side. Just on the flavor of even having chickens, and then digging into the details takes work, takes comparative analysis to look at how others have implemented inspections and issuing permits and fees that have been charged, or how many chickens and the square footage. So I absolutely agree with you that this is just a first pass. There's more to be done, and the comments that you sent me today from the health department are really, really instrumental in taking some good next steps and understanding the concerns that might be out there.
Okay, well, I'm not sure how to proceed then. I mean,
Motion to table it. Hang on, I got a couple of things that I
We
think
can
may
take-
be
go that
helpful.
way.
Yeah. A couple of things I think are important to include in this is the number of chickens and/or rabbits based on the size of the property. In other words, I think there's the idea is to be able to have a few chickens in your backyard, to give yourself some eggs, and so forth. I think it's important. The distance from the neighboring properties also is a factor based on how many chickens you're having. If I have 6 chickens, I can be probably pretty close to a neighboring property that's inhabited and not present a lot of problems. As well as included in that would be how waste is handled and/or recycled. I think that's an important part of this that is critical. And that would include, not by any storm drains or anything like that could get some wash of.
or hooked to a sanitary.
Of the waste, yeah.
Oh, sure.
So I think that's somehow an important thing, and rabbits are the same. And I noticed we have 75 feet for rabbits and 25 feet for chickens, and they both stink, so it really doesn't make any difference to me. They should probably be the same footage, and again, based on the size of that property. Whereas a larger property that can give you 3 football fields, which that'd be a huge property, by the way. To put your
That's the
chickens.
ordinance.
Yeah, I know.
I'm just saying, here, we're going from this to whatever.
Yeah, so I think that all needs,
Cleaned up.
I'm gonna say, in theory, that the idea of rabbits and chickens in a backyard, as long as they're contained, they don't get out, they don't run around. We don't have influx of white rabbits all over the city and chickens all over, that this just needs to be baked a little more, Kirsten. I think maybe looking at other samples that have this would be of a help, and that have had it for a while maybe, and have been able to make amendments and so forth. So that we can use it as an example. But I think in theory, again, like we said, I don't think any of us have any problem really with it as long as it's handled correctly.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I just don't want to see a regulation that is so restrictive that basically we can say, oh yeah, we allow chickens, but they're so restrictive you can't have chickens
Yeah.
because nobody can meet all the regulations. Maybe, 2 properties in the city. It does no good to have regulations on the books saying we can have the chickens if we restrict it down so far that you can't.
Yeah, I've got a couple comments too. I agree, we need to have a square footage of the coop size So if you have whatever the number of chickens would be, you need say a 3 or 4 foot size coop per chicken. And if you have a run area, you've got a size area as well. I'm not sure it's real healthy not to let them out of a coop if it's 100 degrees and you're keeping them inside, not to mention all the sanitary issues with that. There's no inspection requirements like you have on rabbits. I think we need some sort of inspection criteria to be sure we are doing this correctly if we do it. Also, I'm not sure the city has the time to do all this anyway, but they'll have to address that. There are a lot of other issues. I've talked to a couple people in Cincinnati who actually either have chickens or have had chickens, and they gave me a lot of interesting things. One was my niece who put chickens in her backyard and ended up rats burrowed into the ground underneath the coop and got their way into the coop to get to, not to the chickens, but to the feed. You know, they want the feed. Whereas the raccoons, which we have a lot of, which I've seen in my neighborhood, they want the chickens. So there are predator issues, there are smell issues, there are fly issues, there are, I don't know what the correct word is, but I'll say excrement issues, if that's the right word today. And as far as the health concerns, you mentioned histoplasmosis. I've actually had that. And in my case, it can affect more than your lungs. And in my case, it affected my eye. And I had to get laser surgery on my eye to correct that. So I'm partially blind in my one eye. And they did say it was related to bird droppings, probably from Echo Lake. But anyway, so it's a real disease among all the other things. So I think, like everyone else is saying, we need to look at all the rules before we would even consider voting on it. It's way too early. And I'm not even sure that we should, I'm not sure that we or the city commission should even vote on this. Possibly if it would be addressed as a citywide vote, I think it might be more appropriate than having 5 people decide something like this at the commission level, if they want to pursue it that way. But again, I think all the particulars need to be worked out a little more, so I'm sure we'll be tabling this to get a little more handle on it.
Do we have a motion?
Is there any public comment?
Want public comment first?
I think we could, if we're talking about table, we could table
Just
it,
table then.
then do the public comment next time it comes up.
Yeah, motion to table it.
Because we have a large agenda today.
Second.
Okay.
We got a motion, a second to table it. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 The resolution is tabled. Next resolution is, if you could read the resolution?
Resolution PC 6-23, a resolution requesting a recommendation for a new configuration of traffic flow on Market Street. And I believe we have Chris Schmeesing here to give an overview of the CAD drawing that you see on the next page in your packet. If not, I'm happy to present a bit. But we've got basically, is he in the back corner? Excellent.
Good evening, Commission. Yeah, as Kirsten referenced, I'll field this one. The real impetus is, as you might be aware, there's been some concerns presented over the recent past in terms of traffic patterns at Main and High Street and how that affects public safety with vehicles making the turns in and out of the different parking areas in addition to the intersection all being in such close proximity. Big picture, we've discussed with City Commission, and we're currently in design mode with a consultant. We're about to engage a consultant, and we'll be looking at what enhancements need to be made to curb widths or curb extensions, things of that variety, to try to make the intersections function as well as they should, and also make it as safe as possible. One of the lower hanging fruit, if you will, in terms of opportunities we think to make things work better there is simply reverse the flow of Market Street. Right now you have High Street, which is both eastbound and westbound, and then Market Street, which is one way to the east. So all the traffic, which isn't a ton of traffic, but the traffic from Market Street all exits onto Main Street. So you have one more traffic pattern or maneuver entering onto Main Street, trying to exit to the right onto Main, or prior to the delineators and the planners, or even during their existence, trying to make left turns onto Main Street. So it creates another point of conflict that we could live without. And if we reverse the flow on Market Street and simply run it the other direction, we think the minimal amount of traffic that street entertains, and having them exit off of Main, away from the Main Street traffic, might lessen the points of concern that we currently see at the intersection. Looking at it big picture, simply reversing the angles of the parking to accommodate traffic going to the west instead of to the east, in terms of the angled parking spaces. The parallel spaces on the side of the street fronting Fifth Third Bank would stay the same. You'd just be parking to the vehicle to the left side of the street as opposed to the right. And at the intersection of High and Main, or Market and Wayne, my apologies, again, the volume is not such that it should really have much of an impact there. You've got a four-way stop. There's not a lot of traffic that's moving at a through traffic rate of speed. So the maneuver there to go left or right off of Market, onto Main or Wayne, should not be much of an event in terms of the activity or volume. At least that's what the traffic engineers anticipate, and that's what we would agree with, quite frankly. So seems like an opportunity to make something that's not working so well a little bit better. And then, like I say, bigger picture, we're going to continue to look at the quads and the intersection and see what else could be done there. Wanted to bring it before you this evening. It's really a function of engineering design, consideration of professional engineer judgment, and whether or not it makes sense in terms of traffic engineering and the standards that exist there. We've had this reviewed and recommended by our traffic engineering consultant. By virtue of the Planning Commission's role and being a part of transportation planning and having a voice in that process to make sure that we stay true to our master transportation plan and comprehensive plan and things the like, seemed entirely appropriate to bring this item before you this evening, just to receive any comments, observations that might be pertinent, so that we can consider that as we move forward. I would tell you that this item was previously presented to the Main Street Merchant Group. So they've been briefed on it. We've received some comment from the downtown merchants, and by and large supportive, some with some reservation or cause for pause simply because of change, but no significant comments of concern with that regard. So that's the gist of it. Happy to answer any questions.
So the staff recommends approval?
We do.
Okay. And just so you know, Stu Shearer, he sent me a note on Facebook right before the meeting. He talked to some people, and they wanted to remain there, but put some planter and low shrubs in the center. I don't know if I can find that compelling. I'll share that with the commissioner, because he was a past planning commissioner. It seems it goes east or west, fine, and it addressed that concern. But you're still going to do the work to make it pedestrian-friendly crossing Main. Wasn't there a project to
Yeah.
Because it is a long way from the gazebo area across, and there's one designated crosswalk, but it seems like you gotta kind of go halfway, get some refuge, and then go the rest of the way.
Right.
And they were gonna do that. Is that still in the planning stages, or are we gonna still, even if we change this, I would hope the city would consider going forward with those Main Street
We
improvements?
are, and that's part of the design work that I alluded to earlier in my comments. This is not in lieu of or instead of or without that. This is pavement markings on the pavement, so we really don't need the full-blown design work and construction documents that would be required for the other improvements, be it curb extensions or curb width alterations. So that design work will continue, and we will advance the idea of how do we make it as pedestrian safety as possible, and also calm the traffic but still facilitate all the maneuvers and the parking configurations that are desired by the community. But in the interim, we can go ahead with this improvement because it can happen without all those other things being necessary. End goal, you alluded to shrubs and planters, is planters and the delineators in the center of the road all go away, right? So that was an initial response that had some minimal positive impact, I suppose, and then delineators and whatnot, it kind of took on a life of its own, and it's frankly not the solution, big picture. So we're working towards the big picture solution.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. Any questions from the commissioners?
So,
Yeah?
good.
How soon would this take place?
The one-way, as soon as the weather breaks, and we would be able to, we'd go out and reseal the pavement so we can cover up the existing pavement markings and then restripe it with the new traffic pattern.
Okay.
So perhaps April, maybe May.
So all the stuff in Main Street that you call delineators would all be gone all the way out, or just in that area?
Not as part of the one-way change for Market Street.
Okay.
That's phase one, if you will. We're working with a consultant, or we're engaging a consultant to do the necessary design work to make the alterations to the curb widths or curb extensions for pedestrian crossings, those kind of things that would need to happen on Main Street. And then once we have those construction drawings, that'll come before you for this kind of hearing. And you all would be aware of it, and then it would be bid, and we'd sign up a contractor and have them out there to construct it. That's likely the latter part of the summer.
So eventually, all the stuff in the road would be
And with
gone.
that phase, all the stuff in the center
Okay.
road would go away.
Now, the only bad part about this layout is if you're going north on Main, turning left on Market, you're gonna get a backup. That's the only negative I see, because we get several backups there when we go left, either on High or at, well, it'd be High, but there's a lot of backup at High sometimes when they go left.
Yeah, and part of the bigger picture is looking at the flow of traffic and the platooning of traffic and where those breaks or opportunities occur or should occur or could be induced, so that side street traffic has the opportunity to make their maneuvers,
Yeah.
so that we don't have the backups.
Okay.
And frankly, it's Main Street. It's the downtown economic platform for local economy. You don't really want vehicles to just buzz through there at 40 miles an hour. You want traffic to have to stop and spend a minute
Yeah.
and shop and pay.
I think anything that gets rid of all the stuff in the road is a good thing. I mean, I think everyone's
I think there's
wants to
consensus
see all
on
that gone.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think everybody's in agreement on that.
yeah.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very good.
Yep.
Any questions from anyone present, either for or against resolution number PC 6-23? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
Move to adopt, I'll move
make
to
a motion
adopt go ahead. Go ahead. I'll be quiet.
Make a motion to approve PC 6-23.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. And whereas the Planning Commission has studied the request, conducted a public hearing on the matter, and has established findings that indicate the restriping and traffic will not threaten the general health, safety, and welfare of the community, and conforms to all applicable plans and policies of the city, including the complete streets policy. At this time, could you poll the commissioners?
Gary Koenig,
Aye.
Shannon Brandon,
Aye.
Brad Bupp,
Aye.
Eddie Harvey,
Aye.
Joe Wilson.
Aye.
Resolution number PC 6-23 is approved. Now moving on to resolution number 7-23.
A resolution requesting approval of construction documents for utility service extension to 1208 Recker Road to the Ohio Patient Access Dispensary. You all have seen indications of this development a few times in the past, once for a special use for the drive-through that they want to integrate into the development pattern. Once also to dedicate some right-of-way and replat the two parcels into one. This item is to rectify a situation where that infill site or greenfill site, however you want to look at it, does not have any water or sewer service at this time. So in order to develop there, the applicants for that project have proposed to extend the service to that site. It is somewhat of an opportunity for, zooming in on this parcel, I can't imagine another user coming along this far in the process. Usually if you find out there's not services at the site, you take off and find another site. But in this case, because of the dispensary process of lottery selection for these licenses, they're stuck on this location and they'd really like to develop it. They've got a good plan to do so. So they are being very good team players in extending the services out to the site. So it'll be 8-inch water main and 8-inch sewer out to that site to serve them. The neighbors are going to be noticed for the closing of this when that takes place. They've got a good traffic plan. And what we're asking is for approval and then to allow staff to approve the incoming cost estimate and bond that will come with it, along with all the normal things that the city engineer's office would do with parts submittals. We do recommend approval of the request.
Okay, any questions from the commissioners? Hearing none, is the applicant present? Not present. Is there anyone here that would like to speak and present anything to the commission for or against resolution number PC 7-23? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution PC 7-23.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on resolution number PC 7-23. The Planning Commission has studied the request, conducted a public hearing on the matter, and has established as fact that the proposed construction plans will not threaten the general health, safety, and welfare of the properties affected, is compatible with the general economic development policies of the city, and conforms to all other applicable plans, policies, and codes of the regulations of the city. If you could poll the commissioners?
Gary Koenig,
Aye.
Shannon Brandon,
Aye.
Brad Bupp,
Aye.
Eddie Harvey,
Aye.
Joe Wilson.
Aye.
Resolution number PC 7-23 is approved. That concludes our new business. Moving on, the only other business is after adjournment, we're going to have a follow-on work session with the city commission.
Correct.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We have a motion to adjourn and a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
The meeting is adjourned.